Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you for logging in to the Right Teacher Type, this hour-long HeadsNet webinar. I'm delighted to have Dr. Shilpa Dattar as the speaker of the session. Shilpa is a psychologist and founder of Swayam Analytics. She received a PhD in psychology from RIE, which is the Regional Institute of Education, University of Mysore. I've had the privilege of knowing Shilpa for nearly 10 years. She worked with TTF briefly when we had just begun our research for developing standards for social emotional learning for India. We wanted to dip into her deep understanding of Indian knowledge systems while we were exploring literature from across the world on social emotional learning. And that's how I got aware of Shilpa's research on developing a tool that combines contemporary psychometric methods and Vedic knowledge systems to assess personality. And I think this is something particularly relevant for all of us, especially all of you who are school leaders and senior staff members in schools. Since 2013 or so, when I first got to know Shilpa, her research has been peer-reviewed internationally. And peer review is a very, very rigorous process. And the Swayam tool, which is her personality assessment tool, has been rigorously validated. She has written over 16 scientific papers on the subject, which has been published in international journals. Shilpa's tests are being used in multiple countries and have been found to be highly accurate in their assessment of human behavior, personality, and individual traits. They're also relevant for helping schools take decisions in terms of promoting teachers, giving them additional responsibilities, leadership roles, etc. Recently, and we also had we had to get the proof of the pudding, so to speak. So recently, several TTF staff undertook the self-assessment, and they found the questions interesting and reflective. Each team member received a personal report, and I, as the director of Teacher Foundation, got a consolidated employee analysis report of the team. The report is very comprehensive and provides a comparative insight into team members' professional, personal, and people competencies. And I think this is particularly relevant for all of you who have joined us on this webinar. This helps us identify our collective strength, collective growth areas, as well as individual strengths and individual growth areas. So it works both ways. It helps individual teachers, it helps the school collectively also. Currently, the Teacher Foundation is planning to collaborate exclusively with Swayam Analytics to roll out these assessments for educators and teachers across the country. The cost of these assessments depend on bulk orders and annual subscriptions from schools. But let's hear about these tests from Shilpa herself. Shilpa, a very warm welcome on behalf of the Teacher Foundation and all of us who are gathered here to understand the research that you've done and understand what the tool can actually, how the tool would be beneficial for all of us. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Maya. That was such a wonderful and warm welcome for me. Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure and an absolute honor to be here today to talk to you and your team, as well as the entire audience, the august audience that are gathered here today, consisting of teachers and head teachers. You know, it's simply amazing to interact with all of you. Thank you so much for this. So, I just want to start off with a little bit of the background as to, how this started. And it's a personal story as well, actual happening that happened. So in about 97, 98, I have two children and my son was identified as being dyslexic. And the school that he was studying in wanted us to move him out to a special needs school. And I was against that because I'm sure all of us know that in India, especially if a child is moved into a special needs school, a special school, then they don't have access to a good education, higher education, or even a good career. So he continued in the same school while I started working in a special needs school myself to understand what dyslexia is all about. So in 97, 98, I'm sure you all know that Google was not so big, and research, getting access to research, our textbooks meant that you had to go to a university, sit there, get permission first to go to a university, sit there, read, and understand what it is. in spite of doing all that, I could hardly find any information about dyslexia. And I completed my master's in psychology to see how I could understand that to help my son first. But even in the master's textbooks, I couldn't find anything except one small 3-line paragraph which said what dyslexia is. That's about it. And this was, very disheartening for me. And what I did was I wanted to do my PhD in dyslexia. And I started researching a lot of work from the Western models. And that's when I realized that, also when I was working with the students, special needs students in the school, I realized that the tests that were being used were all foreign tests, and they were not applicable to an Indian audience. They were very poor adaptations. And as adults, we were not able to understand what the questions were asking, what the tests were asking. And unfairly, we were categorizing the children who weren't able, because English is a foreign language in India, and they were not able to understand the question. So by default, they were categorized as being dyslexic, learning disabled, global learning disability, so on and so forth. And I found that this was extremely unfair to the children, and they didn't have a future after that. So with that thought in mind, I completed my master's, and then I wanted to develop a set of tests that would help identify such children at a younger age. And that would be applicable to people across the world. So that was my first mandate, that it should be applicable to people across the world. And then when I started looking at the Western models, I found that the Jungian and the Freudian method of understanding people was very different. They looked at people who had come to their clinics with mental health issues. They studied them, they categorized them, and then they said, if this is what clinical population is, then perhaps this what is not them is what normal people, so-called normal people, should be or could be. And I felt that this was a wrong approach to understanding people, because by and large, most of us are able to get on with our daily lives. We call ourselves normal, and we get on with our daily lives without much problem. So, and that is a majority, the global population, that is a majority of people who are able to function well. And looking at clinical population and assuming that what normal people could be is a wrong approach. So I looked at what else could be done, and that's when I came across the Indian method of understanding people, which is entrenched in the Vedic knowledge system. So if you look at the Vedas, the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, Ayurveda, Sankhyan philosophy, which is atheistic, yoga, they're all talking about how to understand human mind behavior and what it is to be able to bring, what is abnormal behavior or clinical behavior, as well as how to bring it back into normalcy. And I felt that that was a more holistic way of looking at people and understanding them. And the 5-element theory, the Panchamahabhutas, Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Up, and Prithvi, they comprise the human entire world as well as the entire universe. So I'm sure all of you are following astronomy, and all of you must have heard all these astronomers talking about how all of us are bits of stardust. And that reinforced my thought about how this is applicable to people across the world in varying permutations and combinations. And that's where my journey started. And I went on to do my PhD from RAE Mysore University. I developed these tests to assess personality based on the Vedic knowledge system, and developed my own algorithm-based software for that. I got my PhD based on that work, published about 17 papers to date now. And because of the high reliability and validity, it's being used for research in multiple countries, like Maya just mentioned to you. So essentially what we do is to identify the personality of a person based on the Panchamahabhuta theory. The 5 elements, they combine with each other at the physiological level to form the Tridoshas of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, which is what entire Ayurveda and yoga is based upon. The same Panchamahabhutas combine with each other at the psychological level to form the Trigunas of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, which is what Sri Krishna talks to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. And it's there in the Sankhyan philosophy, the other Puranas, so many other itihasas, and so on and so forth. And I combined it with modern psychometric methodology, used collected data, applied analysis, and then built the entire test, which assesses people on the physiological, psychological, and ethical aspects of a person, making it truly holistic and very accurate and in-depth. And to complete the story that I started with, my son is now a lawyer. He qualified as a lawyer, and he's practicing in Bangalore. He set up his own law office. And then coming back to, Swayam, we have built our own software. We have multiple IPs, and we assess multiple aspects of people for different use cases. The entire work is based on more than 12 years of research and development, and I got my PhD based on that. It's standardized and applicable to Indians. It's made by Indians for Indians, but applicable to people across the world. More than 17 peer-reviewed publications. And we have a knowledge advisory comprising of two Padma Bhushan awardees, Padma Shri awardees, and multiple professors, deans of universities, VCs, and so on, which helped in making sure that the test was really valid and really reliable. So the tests have undergone 47 iterations each. There are a set of 3 tests. And then it was being administered to 5th standard government school child to make sure that it's as simple, so simple that even a 5th standard child can understand it. The tests have also been accredited with the Indian Institute of Business Psychology, and we've applied for 1 patent, 8 copyrights, and 3 trademarks. I've also received multiple awards for my work, both from India and abroad, because we combine Vedic knowledge, ancient knowledge systems with modern, methodology and psychometric testing, as well as developing infrastructure and software for that. And then also received multiple awards from Rotary and the US and so on. The tests are being used for research in NIMHANS in Bangalore, Amity and Amrita University, Kaivalya Dham Yoga Institute, which is in Lonavala of Pune, and business schools in the US, as well as integrative medicine universities in Germany. The tests are completely online. For the students, we are using a 30 questions format, which is short and takes about 20 minutes for a person to answer. It's all in multiple choice questions and easy to understand English, Kannada, and Hindi languages. We've built our own algorithm, and the child will get instant and objective reports immediately. So also with our other target audience whom we work with corporates, as well as teachers and managers in different organizations. So we identify essentially the training needs that are required for the teachers and then targeted it to learning and development requirements that a school would need, institution would need, to enable higher teacher engagement and development. We identify the key motivators to ensure that the productivity of the individual is higher, and also so that they can take on other roles and responsibilities that they may be good at, which the institution doesn't know at all. We have conducted more than 11,000 assessments, and we assess about 189 traits, and also about 16 classical personality types, plus another 20 in addition to that. And we promise an accuracy of 80%, but most of our clients come back and tell us that it's, about 95, 98% accurate. And in the recruitment, what we do is to identify the teachers with their dominant traits, because you want to know whether the teacher cares for others, whether they are able, what about their emotional intelligence, whether they are self-aware and they have the empathy to teach a child who might be lagging in school, so on and so forth. And whether they have the personality to take care of the students that have been handed over under their care. And to assess the fitment, whether they even fit the culture, because each school has a very different culture and tradition that they follow, whether they fit the culture and the values of the school or not. And we have different types of reports. For the recruitment, we offer the short questionnaire report, which, like I mentioned, is about just 30 questions, multiple choice, for the junior as well as the senior teachers. And we also have an in-depth report for the junior and the senior teachers, which will help you in understanding the entire gamut of all that you want to know. So we collect something like 400, 500 data points with which we'll be able to answer multiple levels of questions, meta-analysis, and so on and so forth. We also have something for the principals to help them to, ace up their own level and become more savvy in how they are able to understand themselves and become better leaders. What we essentially also do is to identify the individual's dominant nature and attributes, their stress levels, whether they've even answered the tests honestly or not. So we have a social desirability spectrum that we assess, which will tell you if they've answered honestly or not, and whether the individuals and also the individuals helpful, neutral, and trace traits. We do a competency analysis, and then of the organization, the people, and the different categories of competencies, additional roles that the person would be capable of taking on other than the primary teaching role, their strength and development requirements, the L&D and the strength and development needs of the person, caution and growth areas, as well as customized resources to help them to overcome these, the inhibitor traits that we would have identified in their personality. So I've already collected the data from about 500 or so teachers, and we did an analysis of that so that we could present it to you here, a combined analysis. I can't name anybody, obviously, but this is a combined analysis. And this is the gender distribution of the people, of the teachers, as well as the age distribution that we found. The social desirability spectrum is how many teachers have answered the test honestly or not. So high indicates that they have tried to manipulate the test, which is about 33% of them. Low is what we ideally want, because that means that they've answered the test honestly, and we can depend upon the report to understand them in depth, which is 62%. And medium is 5%, which could be some people who could have got confused, couldn't figure out how to answer, things like that. So those human error always happen. So we are able to identify all the different categories. And we also identify the stress levels in the teachers, because that's extremely important to know. Many times what happens is that the teacher might not even show that they are under stress, but then their behavior with children, their behavior with their peers changes because of the stress that they are constantly facing. And we found that 20% of the teachers, which is a significantly large number, is under tremendous amount of stress without access to good systems to overcome that. And this could lead to a lot of issues. And I'm sure every school would want to take some, step towards helping these teachers to reduce their stress or help them cope with it. We also notice the physiological combination in the people. And if you see here, we have different categories. So creative, logical, creative, methodical, and methodical, logical are the different categories that we found. This has an impact as to how the teacher behaves with the child, as well as with your peers and others. The psychology, the physiology and psychology are very closely interrelated, obviously, because most of the psychosomatic diseases like BP, diabetes are all, we know that they are interrelated to each other. Unlike in the West, where they say that, you don't need to understand the physiology of the person, only the psychology is enough. India has never followed that Cartesian dichotomy at all, ever. We've always believed that, the body, mind, and spirit are one unit, and we need to understand all of them in tandem with each other. So looking at it from that perspective, the physiology and the psychology, 66% of the group are harmonious, and it would be great for all of us to have harmoniously oriented teachers rather than rajasic, the lethargic, or even passionate oriented teachers. The lethargic teachers would be a real difficult kind of a category for any school to deal with. They are the ones who would also create a lot of trouble for you. So we also identify people who are troublemongers, if it helps, and that would also give you a lot of inputs as to what you can do with them. These are the different kind of group analysis that we do, which Maya.
Sorry, Shilpa, if you could just sort of go slower, because just go back to the earlier one. Maybe it'll help to explain, because a lot of the people in our audience may not understand what we mean by harmonious, passionate, lethargic, etc. If you could just spend a little bit of time explaining that. Thanks.
Sure. And will you give me a 5-minute notice before my time gets over?
Oh, yes. Don't worry.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So we also noticed that predominantly that 66% of the teachers were harmonious, which means that they are calm, they are very collected, they don't lose their temper. They are also very empathetic, and they are also extremely ethical in their dealings with children and peers. And that is the kind of teachers we want teaching our children. And I'm sure each of you would want those kind of teachers in your team. The harmonious lethargic is another combination, which we have found to be quite problematic when you're dealing with dealing with your team. Those kind of people would always tend to create some problem or the other, and you would have, and if it goes unaddressed, it can have a lot of issues that you will have to deal with at a later stage, big issues that you will have to deal with. The harmonious passionate are still great because they're extremely passionate about their work while also being harmonious. And those are the kind of teachers who would really be, they would be ambitious, and they would also be able to take the organization forward in a positive manner. Harmonious passionate lethargic is again very equidistant, equilibrium kind of a person, and they are great for having in your team. The lethargic ones are again troublemongers, because then they would be looking to put your workload onto somebody else, and there would be a lot of discontent amongst the other teachers. They might not necessarily come to you as a head teacher and complain about it, but you can notice that there is some issue, some discontent, some friction going on in the team. The passionate ones are little bit tend to be on the aggressive side, may lose their temper with kids, may not be very patient, may not be very empathetic, and you would have to take a call whether you want to have more of these kind of people or a moderate number of them or not at all. That's dependent on each organization. The passionate lethargic are again a little bit of a problem. You might not want to have them also, because there again you would see that there's a lot of anger issues with those kind of people, a lot of depression issues, and a lot of negative moods and feelings that they come out with. Any questions that we can address now, or should we address the questions only towards the end, Maya?
No, I think it might help in case somebody has a question.
Sure.
I think there was already a question on chat.
Okay.
How can we conduct these tests in school? That we will explain right at the end. These are online tests. These are internet-based tests. So Vartika Sharma had asked that question. I was just thinking it might be useful for you to also talk about, what each of these physiology groups are about: methodical versus logical, logical creative versus creative, and methodical logical. Because you have individual group, titles and names as well as combinations. So it would be good for the audience to understand that.
Sure. So creative kind of teachers are ideally who would be able to think out of the box, come out with different kinds of explanations to help children understand, any concept. They would also be very, creative in problem solving, and also be able to teach children in the way that they need to be taught. The logical ones are extremely, logical. That is exactly what they are. And they're also very passionate about what they want to teach and how they teach it to the children. They might not be very creative, but at the same time, in their area, they would be creative, and they will be able to communicate very effectively. They are good leaders, and they will be able to bring the school children together and take them forward to the position that they want them to give them the necessary tools, tricks of the trade, equipment, anything that is needed for children to ace their exams, to do well. They'll be able to provide all that. The logical creative is a combination of these two. They can bring out the best in the person in the person, as well. Also, it will have some negative qualities, but those are generally tend to be on the lower end of the spectrum, the negative qualities, I mean. So the positive aspect is that the logical creative would be great to have, because they're extremely creative and very logical when they are communicating with the children without, untoward instances and so on. The methodical is one who will stick to the book, stick to the rule book, and do exactly what is there and not jump out of that 1 inch. So those are the kind of people you might want to get for your administration, your accounts, things like that. And that would be really beneficial for you. So they will stick to each and every rule that is there. And they pay a lot of attention to the small details of any work that needs to be done. Not very great at teaching. They're a little slow, but still good teachers. If you are looking at from the teaching perspective, but excellent at administration, really excellent. The methodical logical is the combination of the methodical and the logical. And that would again mean that you have a good candidate who would do well in studies, in teaching, sorry, and who would also be a little slow, but they would still not compromise on becoming so slow that, they're not able to complete the portions. No problem with them losing their temper and any untoward incidences in school. No such things with these kind of people. Can I go ahead to the next slide, or any
Yes,
question?
there's a question here from Sumati Venugopalan, who says, why are passionate teachers not useful to the organizations? I don't think, Shilpa, you said passionate teachers are not useful.
No, I didn't say that.
But I think the way we colloquially understand passionate teachers and the way your tool interprets passionate teachers would be different. So maybe you can explain that.
Yeah. Passion is just, something. I'm very passionate about my work, but that doesn't mean I'm not good for the organization. In fact, I would be very good for my organization, because even if the head teacher is not there, I'll be able to take her role and do excellent in presenting the organization in front of the public. So passionate teachers are really good. I'm not saying that they're not good at all. They would be excellent. And in fact, these analysis, like Maya mentioned, would also help you to identify what kind of teachers you want to be in higher positions, like your school coordinator, or, somebody who's speaking to the external, set of public, or other agencies. Whom do you want to represent the school over there? So this will help you to identify all those kind of traits and characteristics that are needed, which the person should have or shouldn't have. So passionate teaching is extremely good. I'm not saying it's bad at all. The only problem is with what I said is on the right side is with harmonious lethargic. That would be a little bit of a problem. That and the lethargic teachers would create the problem, not any of the others. I hope that answers your question, ma'am.
So just reiterating, passion along with lethargic, that combination can lead to conflicts.
No, not passion. No, harmonious along with lethargy.
Okay.
What about passionate with lethargic?
Passionate with lethargic also, they pull the person down. So that's also difficult. They are the ones who might lose their temper, have a lot of temper issues, aggression, things like that. Harmonious lethargic is dangerous. I would say really dangerous.
So we may come back to it. You can carry on, Shilpa.
Sure.
And friends, please put your questions on chat. Yeah.
So the group analysis that we do, it's a detailed 15-20 page analysis that we would give to the head of the institution. And in that, we will be giving, I took it from another report because I couldn't share, there were some names in the teacher report. So I've shared this. So the physiological nature of the person, of the team, and then, the dominant nature types, the self-competency, how they have performed, the professional competency, how they have performed, people interactions, and then different business competencies and so on. So we give a detailed analysis like this, and this will lead to identifying which are the competencies that your team is lacking in. Can anyone tell me what this HML could mean? Anyone in the audience?
High, medium, low.
Correct. High, absolutely right.
Low, medium, high.
Correct. It's high, medium, and low. So if you see, obviously the names have been blacked out. Leading this person is medium, assertive is medium, coaching is high, empathy is medium, and relationship nurturing is high. Whereas for this person, all the characteristics are low. So they would need a lot more training, development, things like that, for them to reach to at least a medium level where they can independently teach and integrate, interact with students and peers in a comparable level. Ideally, we want more high and preferably, and at least medium, but not too many lows. 1 or 2 lows in a person, obviously it's normal. But if everything is low, then we want to see whether it's really worth it to have the person, not have the person. What else can we do to improve them? Things like that. And that's where I think TTF comes in with your multiple modules where they can, give a really good teaching as well as training modules.
So there are two ways of looking at it, isn't it, Shilpa? One is when you haven't yet taken the person on. You can
Correct.
get them to do the test, and then based on the test and based on how they're performing under people competency in this analysis, and you get this grid, you can take a call on whether this individual teacher would be the right fit. Having said that, there could be teachers you've already employed, and you want to once you've employed, you can't. I definitely don't recommend them being thrown out. I think it's important to, because they're your teachers, it's important to actually develop them, identify their areas for growth, and then develop them. And this sort of a grid helps school leaders identify more accurately.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of other questions also. Sorry, somebody else had a question, I think. But I'm just going to read out some of the questions, Shilpa, because you won't be able to see. We have Gayatri B, who's asked how to work with teachers who came into the profession by chance and not by choice. Maybe that's where the test can actually help you sift out. But here's another question, Usha Shenoy. She says, can you please elaborate and give examples of how harmonious lethargic can be dangerous?
That is a question I can do one-on-one, but not on a public forum, unfortunately.
Yes, I understand. Yeah. And just for everybody else's, information, we at TTF, we went through the tests ourselves. So because we want to test it out for ourselves to see, is this really relevant? And we found it actually very accurate. The questions are simple to answer, but the overall analysis is, one, it's very prompt, and secondly, it also is very accurate. We found that very, useful for our own organization. Yeah, over to you.
Thank you for that vote of confidence, Maya.
Yeah. You carry on, Shilpa.
Sure. Yeah. So this is another, table that I pulled out. It shows how ambition is one, emotional resilience of the person.
We can't see the change.
Okay.
You may have to share it again. That's why.
Now can you see?
Yes, self-competency analysis. Yes.
Yeah. So we assess the ambition of the person, of the team. And then that's how, the analysis was done. And then the emotional resilience. We need teachers who are emotionally resilient, who have an inclination to learn, because learning, everyday knowledge is increasing today, especially in today's day and age. Knowledge is increasing, and how we interpret it, how we are able to apply that knowledge in our daily life is also increasing. So independent in thinking, in acting, in behaving, learning inclination, and stress tolerance, something that is so critical for teachers, and optimism. If I'm not optimistic about who I am, what I am doing, that's definitely going to reflect on the children who are under my guidance. And we don't want that kind of pessimism to coming into our children. So this is some of the customer feedback that we have had, that it's more than 80% accurate. And then it reduces cost in hiring, because we give the perfect job fit, whether, the person will fit the organization or not. It's unbiased because we don't even meet the person. They're all taking online assessments, so we don't know who the person is, but still the analysis is accurate. And it's a complete data-driven approach. It's not at all, subjective. It's completely objective and a data-driven approach. And some of the head teachers have said that, I can take accurate decisions with confidence based on these reports, which was a huge, plus point for us. And many of the teachers that we spoke to after the assessments also said that, it's like a mirror to my mind, the reports, I mean, they're like a mirror to my mind. I know exactly, so many things that I couldn't even talk about are reflected over there. I couldn't, articulate it, and they are reflected in the report. I'm so thrilled about it, is what we have, the feedback that we have got. And some of the head teachers have said that, that we don't have any surprises about the people whom we have hired, because we knew who they were before we hired them, rather than finding out who they are after you hire and realizing that this is not the kind of person I want. And this is some of the testimonials that we've received. We're also partnered with Government of Karnataka on their Skill Connect portal to, do the psychometric analysis of candidates looking for jobs. And these are the other, companies and institutions that we have been working with over the years. Thank you so much. I would be happy to take any questions.
Sure. So you could actually, yeah. So Shilpa, if you could just remove your remove screen sharing, and then we can ask questions. Thank you. So we'd love to hear some questions. This is a very quick, short presentation on what the tool is. You need to go through the tool to understand it much more. But I think it'll be good because you use a lot of words, especially from Vedic systems and Indian knowledge systems and so on. So maybe it'll help for the audience to know what these words are. You talked about, maybe some of them know, but some people may not also. Tridoshas and Pancha Mahabhutas and Sankhyan philosophy, because the tool is based on these ancient knowledge systems of India, but it's very contemporary. Yeah.
Correct. So the 5 elements, the 5 primordial elements, that is ether, air, fire, water, and earth, they are known as the 5 primordial elements, or the Panchamahabhutas. In Kannada, we say Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Up, and Prithvi. Up is water, and Prithvi is earth. So these 5 combine with each other at the physiological level to form the Tridoshas. So now I'm sure many of us are slightly at least aware of the Ayurvedic terminologies when they do the pulse analysis, and then they tell you are, Vata dominant or you are Pitta dominant. So that's why you get a lot of headaches, or you get a lot of vomiting, or, acidity, and so on and so forth. That is the at the physiological level. I'm sure, and, to give you another context, I'm sure many of us have heard our mothers or grandmothers tell us that, don't eat too much potato. It's going to give you a lot of gas. Or in the season, don't eat too much of this aurekai. I think field beans it's called, because that's also going to give you a lot of gas and stuff like that. And if you eat too much of spices, then it's going to give you a lot of acidity. So each of the food that we eat are also categorized as being Vata, Pitta, and Kapha dominant. So now if you eat too much of curds, and cream and cheese and butter and stuff like that, they tend to kapha is not the chest, the phlegm that you have. It's very different from, so these are the 3 humors of the body, so-called humors of the body. So this is very different from the phlegm that you develop. So that's not it. Kapha is the dosha that we are talking about. And dosha is not that, it's something bad. It's just the categorization of your body. That's all. And secondly, these 5 Panchamahabhutas, the 5 elements, the primordial elements, they combine with each other at the psychological level to form the trigunas of sattva, rajas, and tamas. Now, again, if you look at the kind of food that you eat, or if you look at the kind of people that you are interacting with, I'm sure if you have people, elderly people at home, or your grandmother, grandfather, or somebody, they would say, I'm a Kannadiga, so I can speak in Kannada. I'm not very good at Hindi. So, avanu bala satvika manobhava ironu. That means he's a very, harmonious oriented people, a sattvic oriented person who's not into, fighting with others, things like that. And then you also have people who are rajasic, who are extremely action oriented, who are looking at how they can do certain things, more looking at for their own benefit, things like that. So you have people's behavior that is also classified. And Sri Krishna talks to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita about this. There are about 2 or 3 chapters that he talks about how to understand people with Sattvika Manobhava, Rajasika Manobhava, and so on. And Sankhyan philosophy is atheistic in nature. That's one of the 6 darshanas from the Vedic knowledge system. So the Vedic knowledge system is divided into two categories. One is the Astika darshanas, and then the Nastika darshanas. The Astika darshanas, there are 6 schools of thought, or darshanas, which are so called because they believe in the authority of the Vedas. So that is Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Yoga, Sankhya, and Mimamsa. So these 5 believe in the authority of the Vedas. So if you look at them, Sankhyan philosophy is totally atheistic. It doesn't believe in God. It believes in Purusha and Prakriti. That is, there is one Purusha is, it could be anything, the male element, but not really that, the suprahuman being. And then Prakriti, which is nature. And it is a combination of the two, not a sexual union, but a combination of the two, which gives rise to this entire variety of life forms. And not only humans. It could be animals, plants, birds, insects, the multiple universes that we are realizing that we are part of, so on and so forth. All that is only because of this Sankhya understanding from the Sankhya philosophy. And yoga and Ayurveda are completely based on Sankhya philosophy, 100%. In fact, yoga takes Sankhya philosophy, adds a layer of Ishvara Pranidhana, of the God principle, and makes it theistic. So yoga is also known as theistic Sankhya. And so also Ayurveda. It's completely based on Sankhya philosophy. And this is applicable to people across the world. If you see the rage that there is there for Ayurveda and yoga across the world, I don't think anybody on earth can say that, yoga didn't, do anything for them. Definitely it would have helped them in some way. The pranayamas, the asanas, anything, whatever you do, some way or the other, it would have helped you. There is not one being on earth who can say it didn't help me. Same way with Ayurveda. But then because of the differences in, formulations, medications, so on, if you don't adhere to the scripturals and stuff like that, then Ayurvedic medicine can have an effect. But then again, that's dependent on the kind of company that you take the medicine from. So those are the different ways that it has evolved. And I have just imported these concepts into psychology.
Into a tool, into a psychometric tool. So, which is very interesting, because here you have, ancient knowledges, you've sort of put it into a very modern, contemporary psychometric tool.
Yeah.
There's a question here. Are all the test findings shared with the teachers who have undergone the analysis?
Yeah, their own reports will be shared with them. They cannot see somebody else's report. But the head teacher can see everybody's report, as well as the group analysis that we provide with them.
So you can make a comparison. The school leadership can make a comparison of all the teachers. And the idea is not to criticize or to in any way negate a teacher, but to help understand where individual teachers are coming from.
And see how the school can support them to be better.
And I think, you mentioned, please, dear friends, please put other questions also. I have a question, because based on what you talked about, because whenever people answer a test or, do an assessment, there is a social desirability. You tend to answer in a certain way because you think it is the right answer. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about the whole idea of social desirability, value.
So social desirability is when we want to be perceived in the way that we may not be. Or it could also be that we want to project ourselves into being somebody we are not.
We're not.
It could work both ways. So in the Swayam tests, what we have been able to achieve is that we can identify if the person has tried to manipulate the test. Have they given socially desirable answers to show themselves to be something they are not? So we identify that, and that comes out as being high. If it is high, that the person has not given proper answers. They've not been honest while answering, and they may have to retake the assessment again at some point of time. Or that is once they're inside the organization. But if you're trying to recruit somebody, then you might want to reconsider if you want to hire somebody who's trying to hide something about themselves.
Yeah. So what's the value, what's the percentage of people, in your opinion and in your experience, who tend to answer, from a socially desirable perspective rather than authentic and honest perspectives?
I think about 7 to 8% easily in any group we find.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily high, which is good, which means that the tool will be able to distinguish people who are answering the tool honestly from people who are, putting on an act and answering the tool.
Correct. And then we have at least about 3-4% of people who are confused, which is also a quite normal human behavior. Yeah. And then once you have one round of interaction with them, you know where they lay. And then you can inform the principal, or the principal themselves can speak to the person and find out, where the issue has been. And they know which direction the person lays. And that would be a great way for them to know also. And the rest of the people, generally, we see that they answer quite honestly. They're quite intrigued by knowing themselves, because all of us want to know more about ourselves. And if somebody is able to give this kind of in-depth, accurate analysis, it's many times people have come back to me and said, this is like astrology, I know exactly what I should do.
Yeah. Any questions? Anybody who'd like to switch on their mics and ask? We'd be happy to have Shilpa answer the question. Any doubts?
Maya and Shilpa,
Yes.
Stella has made an interesting comment that, she said that, we hope the teachers are able to improve, on their challenges after, this test, and not, suffer from low self-esteem. So, would you both want to share how that is supposed to be handled, when there are challenges and, thrown up by the test for teachers?
Yeah. Shall I go first, Maya?
Of course. No, it's your floor.
Thank you. So I don't think there's any necessity at all, that opportunity at all wouldn't come for any teacher to feel, less about themselves, because they don't have access to somebody else's report for them to compare it with. That's the first point. Second point is anybody, at least once they've reached the age of about 25, 28, they are already a little aware as to what their strengths are and what your weaknesses are, even if they're not able to articulate it as well. So if somebody is able to provide them with an in-depth analysis saying that this is where you lack and you need to do this, so that you can improve, I think that's a very positive way to look at it rather than negative.
Exactly. And I thought from the tests that we took, all of us, and individual tests as well as the group thing, I think the entire wording, the analysis was very developmental. It was not criticizing. It was not demeaning anybody. So I think that's something any psychometric tool would be, and any psychologist using such tools would be careful of. The idea is not to decimate or hurt anybody's sense of self-esteem. The whole idea is to be useful and constructive. So I didn't think it would in any way affect people's self-esteem. It helps you recognize, okay, these are areas that I'm medium in or high in, and these are some areas where I need to improve, and I'm still at this point of time rather low. I think that's the way the test analysis report comes to you.
Correct. Yeah. That's the intention. Absolutely, that's the intention.
Exactly. The intention would not be to in any way damage anybody's self-esteem or self-worth. But it's just that a lot of times schools struggle to identify right teachers and then to hold on to those teachers. And I think a psychometric test, which is homegrown, but which is, sort of stood the test of very intense international peer review. I think it's a great way in which schools can recruit the right teachers and then also develop teachers who they've already recruited, develop them into the kind of competent professionals that you would you want them to be.
Correct. And additionally, we identified their stress levels also, right? So that also, is very important, because we don't want stressed out teachers in the school, right? School authorities wouldn't want that, children wouldn't want that, and your peers also wouldn't want that. So this will also help the school identify those teachers and see how they can help them improve their stress levels, give them different, means and tasks that they could reduce that, counseling perhaps. Because every school has a counselor on board. So I'm sure a lot of things could be taken, which would help in retaining of good talent.
Exactly. Yeah. Sangamitra Basu has a question here, Shilpa. Could we discuss a few sample questions to understand this better?
Sure. So I'll just give you some from the top of my head. So some of the sample questions are how, often I get angry, Do I get angry very fast and cool down very fast? What is the kind of food I like to eat? How much sleep do I need every day? Am I happy with just 4 to 6 hours of sleep? Do I need at least 8 hours of sleep? Or do I need more than 8 to 10 hours of sleep a day for me to feel fresh? And what kind of books do I like to read? What kind of games I like to play? So those are some of the questions that we have put in. It's very simple.
So they seem almost sort of overly simple questions. And from that, you're able to analyze.
Yeah. Because behind the questions, there's a huge amount of matrix that we have built. A complete algorithm and a matrix that we have built, because each question leads to something else, and so many things are there. That's how we are able to get those kind of revelations about a person, interpretations and insight.
Yeah. And also combinations of questions are then analyzed. It's not that individual questions are analyzed.
No. Yeah. It's not A is equal to B. It's always A, B, C, D, and so many other things is equal to something else.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a question which maybe others have. You talked about dominant attributes and nature. So maybe you can just sort of speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So dominant nature, when I say, it's again about the tridosha aspect, the combinations of that. So you have vata, you have pitta, and then you have kapha. Those are the main three, and then you have combinations of them. It could be vata pitta, pitta vata, pitta kapha, kapha vata, so many things. So we have identified 10 of those combinations. And each of them give rise to different kinds of behavior and personalities. In the same way, the attribute also, the psychological attribute, that is the sattva, rajas, and tamas. There are three, but then, you have combinations, sattva, rajas, rajas, sattva, sattva, tamas, rajas, tamas, like that. And those are also, we have identified 10. So these 10 and these 10, they're always interacting with each other. And that gives rise to so many different types of human behavior.
Yeah. We have two questions here. Gayatri B again. She a lot of questions. How to bring a healthy competition between senior teachers and new joiners? Maybe we may want to talk about, do we want competition? But what would you like to say?
No, I don't think I want competition. In fact, I would want the senior teachers to be able to coach
and mentor
junior teachers and lead them to a better place, not compete.
And Sandhya, our colleague, she has asked, at what frequency do you suggest that schools administer this test? And I think this is particularly relevant for all school leaders here.
Yeah, I think once a year, once in an academic year should be more than enough. When, when the schools are in
absolutely
holidays or something like that, when everybody has the time.
Or just before they come back to school and so on.
Correct.
We have Shubham Rai who's asked, how can we enhance the quality time of teachers? I'm not quite sure if I've understood quality of teachers or quality time of teachers. I'm not sure what that is. If you're there, if you could just clarify that, please. What you mean by quality time of teachers? And Stella, meanwhile, has asked again, those tests, are they the same for all different levels of teachers, primary, middle, high school?
The tests are the same, but the way we interpret it for the junior level teachers, mid-level teachers, and senior teachers is very different.
Oh, yeah. Based on
because
their
personality
rules,
is one only.
Yeah.
It's like water. Like, I can use water for drinking, for cleaning, for washing, for watering my garden. So many different ways. So personality is one, but how I interpret in what scenario, whether I'm looking at it from the perspective of a mother, a teacher, a head teacher, or an employee somewhere else, would be as a wife, as a child, would be very different.
And Gayatri, again, come back to clarify this whole junior and senior teachers. Seniors feel insecure when they see juniors are tech savvy, and when they talk about this test, they just resist. I think you should maybe, Gayatri, give it a go, see how it goes, because we don't know if they will resist. And maybe it also will throw up the whole need for teachers, the older teachers, the senior teachers, to learn this new skill of being more tech savvy, more comfortable using technology and all that. The test would throw up the need for developing some of these weaker areas.
And in today's day and age, it's a necessity to be tech savvy, at least a basic level.
I
we
think
can't
so.
do without it otherwise.
Yeah. Okay, we have one last question, and I think then we should close today's session. Could a teacher's state of mind while taking the test influence results? I think this is a great question from Sandhya again. It could be that certain circumstances like exams or a bad class or a bad day at home or at school could affect the teacher.
Yeah, it does. It does. And our tests are very sensitive, and they pick that up, which is why we have given detailed, instructions at the beginning of each and every test, where we request the person to think about how they have been feeling over the last 6 months before they answer, but not to think too deeply about the different combinations. But we want them to answer, like if I'm asking them, do you have a headache? Or, do you feel sick or something like that? Then we want them to answer not of today or yesterday, but over the last 6 months, have they been feeling in that way? Yeah, that's one aspect. The second aspect is that we always request anybody who answers our test, to do it first thing in the morning, after they've had completed their morning routine and then had breakfast, before they set out to their jobs, because that's when the mind is peaceful, and then the most exact answers will come at that point of time. And that is what is most dependable, and we can give the best interpretation at that point of time.
Yeah. Okay, there are a couple more questions, and then we really have to close. Sumati has asked again, is it really possible to bring about changes, however small they may be, in our personality with the feedback from the tests?
Yes, it needs a lot of willpower from my side as the test taker, and will to want to become better, as well as the necessity or the requirement for it. Because if I know that I need to be more calmer rather than losing my temper, and that's a requirement for all of us. Just giving you a simple example. So then I will make efforts to try and see how I can, calm myself down. It's an ongoing process. It's not going to happen overnight, but then at least we are on the track. It's definitely required, and it will happen.
Yeah. And again, Monila, our colleague, she says, how can the test guide the heads in identifying teachers' professional development needs? And I think this is the very last question. We have 1 minute to go.
Sure. That is the whole, when we do the group analysis and we present it to the principal, that's exactly how they will get to know. They get the all the teachers and all the administrative staff, whoever have taken the test, their entire, personality is decoded and given to the teacher, to the head teacher, where they will come to know what kind of training, what kind of developmental requirements are there, and they'll be able to plan accordingly to give them that kind of support through the school.
Shilpa, thank you so much. We really have to end. There are some more questions coming in. Suchitra, Usha, thank you so much, everybody, all the 88, 89 teachers who were part of this webinar. Thank you so much. Schools need to definitely identify and recruit teachers who are the right fit for their institutions, besides enabling and developing existing teachers to assume new roles, additional responsibilities, etc. And I can truly endorse that the Swayam tool is just the right tool. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this webinar with Shilpa. Do get in touch with us if you're interested in, undertaking the test for your teachers and for you yourself. We are going to be having another webinar on the 1st of September. Rashmi, just correct me if I'm wrong. So we will be sending out some more, details about that. There is a feedback form which is also on chat. Do fill up the feedback form before you log off. Till next time, goodbye, stay well, and a big thanks to Shilpa. Thank you for so generously making time for this webinar.
Thank you very much, Maya. I loved being here, and the questions were wonderful. Thank you very much to all the teachers and all the attendees. It was just wonderful to be here in front of you today. Thank you so much for your time.